The next on our hit list is the Cox Orange Pippin. Often considered the finest of dessert apples, this cultivar appeared in England in the 19th century as a chance seedling. This apple is considered by many as the apex of richness and complexity of flavor. There are traits that tend to be apparent in progeny to different extents. The first trait is a complex aromatic flavor, and the second trait is an attractive orange-red coloring. The flavor profile of the Cox Orange Pippin is said to be a mixture of pear, melon, orange juice, and mango. I have not seen any available in my area, probably due to the disease susceptibility and the requirement of a very narrow range of climate conditions needed to produce an ideal flavor. Of the 439 cultivars found in the research paper, Cox Orange Pippin is in the lineage of 59 of those cultivars. Now for the last, and in my opinion, the least of the founder apples. Red Delicious. Red Delicious is one of the most famous common apples produced and consumed in America. Red Delicious is a red sport of a cultivar called Delicious. The bright red color is what made this cultivar commercially successful, and it has become a very important commercial apple. Unfortunately, good looks do not equal good flavor. If you have not been living under a rock when it comes to apples, you would probably know that Red Delicious is kind of bland. Of the 439 cultivars found in a research paper, Red Delicious is in the lineage of 56 of those cultivars. Now let's talk about new breeding parents in apples. One interesting cultivar is Melinda. Melinda is an apple found in Vermont. I could not find much information about its origins. It is, however, the origin of many apples in Minnesota, including Honeycrisp. Now let's talk about other cool projects. Let's talk about red-fleshed apples. Red-fleshed apples are made by breeding red flesh variants of the wild apple with domestic apples. Examples include Almata and Surprise. They have more antioxidants than regular apples. There have been several groups of red-fleshed apple bred, both in history and modern times. After 1944, the plant breeder Albert Etter managed to breed 30 red-fleshed apples from the red-fleshed cultivar Surprise. One of the most well-known of Albert Etter's red-fleshed apples was Pink Pearl. A group of German breeders crossbred Pink Pearl and Jonathan to create a new red-fleshed cultivar called Y Rouge. This cultivar was then used to breed the cultivar Baya Marisa, another red-fleshed apple. A group of New Zealand breeders bred Wolf River with a wild red-fleshed apple to breed the apple cultivar Redfield. This new cultivar was bred with a new cultivar called Sangrado, which was also red-fleshed. From this crossing, a whole series of red-fleshed apples was bred, including the apple cultivar Red Love. I've actually eaten a red-fleshed apple. I had one called Hidden Rose. The apple tasted like raspberry lemonade. If this type of flavor is found in many red-fleshed apples, it could be worth breeding with, if it were not for the fact that it did not have a pleasant texture. Next, you'll talk about more crossbreeding with wild apples. One of the most damaging diseases in apples is called fire blight. Fire blight is a bacterial disease that can kill susceptible cultivars. Common practices to combat this disease is the use of expensive antibiotic sprays and trimming infected branches. Researchers are currently looking into wild apple species for genetic sources of resistance to this disease. Using populations of different species of apple, the researchers have found the general percentage of susceptible and resistant cultivars. 65% of the various populations of various hybrids and species of crabapple have high resistance to fire blight. Within the domestic apple, 18% of the populations of domestic apple have high resistance to fire blight, and almost 75% are highly susceptible to fire blight. In the Kazakhstan apple, 71% of the populations are resistant and 25% are susceptible. The European crabapple has 33% of the populations resistant and 66% susceptible. Now let's talk about potential future founders. Everything that comes after this is mostly opinion, with some basis in the complete book of apples. So if you want to avoid speculation, stop right here. The first apple we will be talking about is the Golden Pippin. The Golden Pippin has been used by a predominant apple breeder of the 1800s known as Thomas Knight. He bred many apples using Golden Pippin due to his capacity to pass on pineapple flavor to his progeny. Examples include Yellow Ingus Tree and Pitmeston Pineapple, both having been described as having pineapple flavor. Since I've had Pitmeston Pineapple, I can confirm that it does taste like pineapple. Next on our hit list is the Nonpareil. Nonpareil has a pear drop flavor, and it would be interesting to incorporate this flavor into modern apples. Next on our hit list would be Court Pandu Plat. The late flowering character trait mentioned earlier allows the tree's flowers to avoid frost. This cultivar also has the capacity to produce a good quality crop of apples. I believe it'd be worth working on figuring out how to breed this trait into other apples. Next, we must talk about Margul. Margul is amongst the oldest of the desert apples grown in England. While the origins are unknown, a pomologist by the name of Hogg reported evidence of cultivation at Brompton Park Nursery in the 1750s. He also suggests that the variety is French in origin. Margul and Ribston Pippin have similar fruit physiologies, such as the flattened shape, flushed russet tones, and similar flavor. This seems to suggest that the Ribston Pippin and Margul share a common ancestor somewhere along the line, due to both of them showing up at a similar time period. The flavor of Margul is like a more mellow version of Ribston Pippin. Due to having these traits alongside good disease resistance, this apple would be worth growing, both for its own fruit and for breeding purposes. One can speculate we can use it as a substitute for Cox Orange Pippin. This concludes part 2. Stay tuned for part 3 where we put the series to bed and move on to another series. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.
Until next time, stay lit, fam.